Guys, welcome to this webinar. It's about rigging in Maya, and mostly we'll cover the basics of how rigging works, and not just how, and also why do we do what we do. Get into making rigging in Maya. So I'm sorry, I was distracted. Something's happening over here. Yeah, so not just how to do something, but also why we do what we do in Maya, and how Maya perceives every action that we do. So Maya, not just because it's a 3D software. So what happens is in real life we know that if all of this is happening because of the muscles that are pulling in, contracting and expanding at the same time. But in 3D world, Maya doesn't recognize that. So what we do is we study this, whatever happening in real life, we study it in mathematics and physics. For example, the distance between these two will also increase the angle between these two. All right, angle between this joint and this joint. So that is like a given. That is how we study in real life. But to make it into 3D, what we do is we reverse engineer. So for example, we tell the software that if the distance grows between these two, then the angle between them should be like this. So so what that Maya does is Maya takes that information and recreates that information in. So whatever we studied, the Pythagoras theorem, the three-dimensional trigonometry, everything that we studied in mathematics that we have in 11th and 12th grade, according to CBSE syllabus, I don't know about anything else. So all of that is how the software is designed, and it's how it's designed to think about it in that sense. So let me just screen share. And, so I hope everyone can see my Maya over here. As you can see, I've made a rigging shelf for myself, and I've added a few stuffs over here, and I will explain to you what these are as we progress forward. So, so as far as I know for now, let's start with the basics. So if we go to the preference over here, all right, setting in preference, and we see settings, you would see that Maya is actually the working units of Maya is actually in centimeters, and the angular is in degrees. That is when whatever Maya measures, all right, all this grid that each and every intersection is there, it's all approximately not exactly 1 centimeter apart. All right, so if I create a box in Maya, all right, and if I am to move it, so if I am to move it, say in y-axis, 5 units, that means it has moved 5 units, that is 5 centimeters from the grid. So Maya calculates it in centimeters. Or if there is a project requirement, for example, you have some sort of game assets, which is the terrain of the game is usually sometimes in, for example, Far Cry has like kilometers of terrain designed for it, and someone has in meters. So if you are converting, from AutoCAD to here, and then you have to change it into inches or millimeter or foot or yard or whatever according to your measurement requirement, you can do it. But defaultly, Maya saves everything. Maya calculates everything in centimeters as distance wise, and when there's rotation, it calculates everything in degrees. So that is what we need to know, and that is the absolute basics of how Maya perceives information. From here onward, we will go and we'll start on what is rigging actually. So rigging is basically when you controlling one object with the help of another is what is the basics of rigging entirely. So because certain objects cannot be controlled by its own, for example, we cannot animate using the mesh, so we put in joints, and so we put in joints, and we animate the joints, and then we give the joints the control to control the mesh of the object. Or for example, we have some sort of polygons. We use our NURBS curves or something to control the movement of that object. So rigging is all about controlling. So if you can control one object with the help of another object, that means that object is rigged. So this is like the very nutshell of what rigging is. And for the people, this is so. There are some people who might be joining this course who don't know anything about rigging. So I'm going to be very basic about it. So for the few minutes, initial few minutes, so like people who know already can bear with me for that time being. So that being said, everybody know whoever has worked in Maya a little bit, especially animators, we know that there are the two basic methods to control an object is through parenting. So one is the simple parenting, and one is the constrained parenting. So before we go into all of that stuff, let's talk about why we, as an animator, do we need to learn rigging. So why do we even learn rigging? I find someone is doing our job for us, or someone's doing the rigging for us in a studio, and then we just take that rig, and if we need something, we just talk to them and figure it out. So the problem is, first thing you need is at least if you don't want to make a full-fledged rig, at least you will have to know about the basics of rigging to handle certain things like multiple constrainings. For example, if you have a prop and it goes from hand to hand, or if you're taking prop from someone else in the animation. So what happens is one character is taking prop from the other character. You need to know where to put in the constraint and where to turn off the weight, where to turn on the weight. If you don't know that, then it will be a nightmare for you to handle such a complex animation. All right. So that is one point. Another point is troubleshooting. So if you are, like working on your own, or if you even in a production setup, you are working, and then you find out that you have encountered a problem, rigging wise, or setting up the elements wise. Then if you know a bit of rigging yourself, you can fix it yourself instead of waiting for someone to come and like address the problem for you. That is one point. That is one advantage of rigging as well. So troubleshooting, and also if you're doing something of your own, for example, the short film that we discussed in the last webinar, for that I took up the free rigs from the market, all right? And there were certain things that like that were not working out for me in that rig, so I had to change a few things. So when I had to change the few things, I could only do it if I had the basic rigging knowledge of how to do it, all right? Because if someone has already done a rigging, all right, and then you have to go in and figure out which node or which network does what, unless you know what it does, you cannot change what it does. So my primary goal of this webinar is to like stop people from being afraid of rigging, right? Like as animators, rigging is your best friend, all right? And it's a fun thing to do. It is very fun to learn it, and once you start doing it, I'm pretty sure that you will get into it, and like you don't want to come out of it. There was a point of time in my life where I actually wanted to be a rigger, but because of like industry constraints, I gravitated more towards animation, and it has worked out pretty well for me, but I do miss rigging a lot. So by taking this seminar and also by working on my own projects, I've actually gotten to reconnect with my rigging skills. So let me share that with you as well. So please don't be afraid of rigging. This is the message of this webinar. I want you all to like when you leave this webinar, I would want you all to like be clearer about the concepts of rigging, the basics of how it works, and start enjoying it as much as I do. Right. So we all know that to control an object in Maya, we use two methods. That is, one is simple parenting and one is constrained parenting. So before we move into any of that stuff, let me show you that how Maya perceives the movement of anything in its 3D viewport. So for example, if you move translate y say 5 units, so it will simply jump 5 units from the grid, all right? So we can assume that everything that happens in Maya is measured from the center of the grid, all right? So whatever value is being measured from the center of the grid, we call it the absolute value, all right? So this is whatever value has changed, it's called the absolute value, all right? And there another method of this, one second, let me just turn on my WordPad. It should be visible to everyone. So Maya calculates values, that is whatever inputs you give via, it separates it into two. So the one is absolute values and one is relative value. So absolute value is whatever is calculated from the center of the grid is called an absolute value, right? Relative value is whatever calculated from, say, an object which is controlling it, or whatever the object perceives as its parent or grid. To explain that example, I'm just going to go into, into my script editor over here. All right, and I just have a small script. There is nothing for you to actually worry about this and all that, how it's going to be and all. It's just a script that I'm showing how to explain. So when there is absolute value, all right, so I'm telling Python to do what is move whatever is selected to x0, y 10 units, and z0. All right, and that is the p cube 1. So this is my p cube 1 over here, as you can see the name. So I'm telling Maya to move p cube 1 10 units in y-axis in an absolute value. All right. So here's what Maya does. So as soon as I execute the script, it will move this box to 10 units. Pretty straightforward. All right. Now see what happens if I do relative. All right. So if I change relative and I put in 5 units, all right. Sorry, not 5. So what's going to happen is now the cube will move 15 units. That is, there were already 10 units there. Now it is only adding 5 units to it. All right. But if for the 5 was same in the absolute value, sorry, you'll see that the cube will come back to 5 units over here. That is, start calculating from the grid. So the distance that it calculates from the grid is usually absolute, unless and until we tell it how to do. So how this works out in rigging. So say you have a character and you have the global controller, right? So when you move the global controller anywhere in the Maya, that is absolute value that is taken, all right? But if you move the hip of the object, all right, and you put it 0, no matter wherever your global control is in the entire world, it will go snap to that one. So according to the hip controller, the global is a relative value, right? So it is calculating from this, and the global, if you hit 0, it will go back to the grid. So the global is calculating from the grid. That is, it has absolute value. That is one small example. I will elaborate on it, but I'm going to use this relative and absolute words every now and then. So I don't want you to get confused on what it is. So I'm just explaining you beforehand. So if we put in for absolute value, say 20, that's going to move 20 units in y-axis. And if we decide from there onwards, we need just 5 more units, all right? So what I'm going to do is put 5 and put a relative value. And now the total value has become 25. So it has only moved 5 values from onwards. So that is a small example of what absolute values and relative values are, all right? And to explain it even further, nicely, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people, it would have been difficult for them to understand in the first code, this one. So let me just move on and show you more. So we'll take our trustworthy cube over here. I'm gonna move it, say 5 units to the positive side of the grid. All right. I'm gonna take a torus and I'm gonna move it in translate Z minus 5 units. That is the minus side of the grid. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy them and say probably move them to translate X 10 units. All right. So we can see they are both 5 units apart from the grid. Okay. So this is the example in which I'm going to show you what you can do with simple parenting and what you can do with constraint parenting, how it actually affects the objects. All right. So to do that, I'm going to do something. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see the distance between the two. All right. And how we can do that is with the help of distance tool over here. So if we go to create measure tools, we have something called a distance tool. All right. I'm just going to click it randomly over here. And then I'm going to constrain the locator, point constrain the locator, so it's snapped to it. Sorry. So you can know that the distance between them two is 10 as it shows over here. All right, because 5 units from here, 5 units from here, the distance, total distance between them is 10 units. All right. Similarly, I'm going to do the same for here. Distance to point. Not to worry about how I did it. It's not important. But what is important is what I'm going to show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to parent these two. That is, this is going to be the child and this is going to be the parent. So if I do simple parenting, we know if we hit P for parent, if we hit that, then, you know, like first like the child, then parent. Now, this is the parent of the torus, all right? Now, notice something when that happens, all right? Before we do that, we see that the translate Z value over here is -5, okay? So as soon as I make this a child and make this parent, notice what happens to that value. Now you see it has become -10. Now how did that happen? So if we zero out the value, you'll see that the torus goes and gets snapped to the box. That means the torus has now accepted the box as its parent, as its world, all right? So whatever value is going to happen is going to be relative to that cube. Okay. So to explain that furthermore, once I move this, all right, I'm moving it around, all right, a lot of places. Okay, I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to do a lot of stuff, but you'll see that there is absolutely no change in the values of the child, because for that its whole world is shifting. All right, it is not being controlled by an object; it has become the part of the object. So that is what parenting is. That is why whatever we do, for example, even if we switch off the visibility, this will also get switched off. So we have given entire control of the torus to the cube. All right. So that is what simple parenting is. Like if you put it, it will become a part of that object. Okay. But that is not the case in constrained parenting. So we have an object over here. For constrained parenting, it's actually opposite. You have to select the controller first and then the controlled object, and then go to constraint and hit parent. Make sure that your maintain offset is on. Okay, and apply. Now, if you see, the value didn't change for this torus. It's still -5 over here. All right. And if I zero out all the values, it will go to the grid. It will go to the center of the grid. That means it still follows the absolute value of the grid. All right. It has nothing to do with the cube. We have just momentarily transferred the controls to the cube's hand, but it is still loyal to the world. Okay. And because of this sort of freedom that we get in constrained parenting is why we use it more in rigging rather than simple parenting. Because once we do a simple parenting, it becomes the part of the object. Whatever changes you make in the object, the other one, either you have to counter animate or something like that, or you'll have to forget about it. So you don't get any freedom. That is one point. Another point is it also gives you a freedom of, say, for example, if I scale this, all right, you can see that the distance between them increases. That will happen in the case of parenting as well, simple parenting. So if I give this cube 5 units, it will multiply the distance by the same amount. So if I scale this by 5, sorry, you'll see that the total distance have now become 50, which was 10 earlier. Okay, but we also see that the scale has also increased proportionately. But the same won't happen for the for the cube. If you put 5, yes, the distance between them increases, okay, but the scale doesn't change. The scale is still 1 because the parenting, for that we'll have to give it another constraint, that is scale constraint. Otherwise, it won't act. So this is what the advantage of having a parenting is. I mean, a constraint is. You get a freedom in a lot of sense. Also, once you made a parenting connection, okay, it is very hard to break it. For example, if you've done it, all right, you've done an animation, for example, from 1 to 25, you have moved this parented object like this, all right. So if you go and shift P, that is unparent this object, the animation is now lost, and there is no other way to bring it back. So if you go ahead and say, oh sorry, I forgot, let me just parent it again. So if I parent it again, it's not going to work like that. All right. Because once the connection is broken, it becomes a totally individual object and it starts getting its own value. For example, right now it has no values over here. Okay. As soon as I unparent it, it will start taking the global values. So that is, and another disadvantage is, if you go into outliner, that is, if people who don't know, it's window and outliner. If you click on here, you'll show the outliner over here. And you can see that once I click the cube, you can see that the torus is under the cube. So it comes under the hierarchy. Whereas this torus has no such complications in it. It does not go under the hierarchy of any other object. So this is the advantage of a constraint parenting. Another advantage that we all know about constraint parenting is that you can switch on and switch off the constraint if you don't want it. All right. So for example, if I animate it from 1 to 20, I animated this object. Now after say frame 20, I don't want this object to go with this. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit set key on frame number 20. You will get something called blend parent. All right. Once it's 0, sorry, once it's 1, you'll know that from there onwards, the cube does not control the torus at all. All right. This is a freedom that we get in constraint, but this is not the freedom that we'll get in simple parenting. So I can go a lot on and on about them, but the main point that I wanted you to know is that there is a significant difference between simple and constraint parenting, and that is why there is a lot of different uses of them in Reiki. So where do you use simple parenting? For example, if you have, for example, the global controller, if you scale it, the whole rig needs to be scaled. So the entire group of the rig is then simple parented to the global controller, so that you scale it and everything scales together. That sort of stuff we can use in parenting. Now, if the objective of rigging is to control one object with the help of another object, let me show you there are different methods to do the same. Okay. So I have a cube over here. All right. I'm going to move it to over here, and another, let's say I have a circle, or I have a sphere over here. -5. All right. Now I want the translate Z of the cube to affect the translate Z of sphere. So one thing I can do is I can put in like maybe parent or point constraint. But what if I have to only control the Z axis and rest I don't have to control? So for something like that, let's just freeze transform this. Go to modify, freeze transformation. What freeze transform does is it zeroes out any value that you have given it. It will reset the value and make this point as its default 0. Okay. So modify, freeze transformation. And now what I can do is I want this to be controlled, right? So what I can do is I can go to the translate Z value click on it, control and right click. Okay, you will get this menu, right? Once you get that, go to connection editor. All right, click on connection editor. There's a small editor that comes up over here. Let me show you. There's a small editor that comes up over here. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the translate value over here. So as you can see, the left side is the p-sphere one. We need to make it this one. So reload left is going to be pq1, and reload right side is going to be p-sphere. So if I go to the translate version over here, translate of this one and translate of this one. All right. So what I'm going to connect is I'm going to connect the translate x of cube to the translate x of sphere. So now you see, if I move the, I'm sorry, this is sphere. Okay. Oh, sorry, I can't translate x. I was moving translate z. So translate z to translate z. All right. Now if you see, the connection has been established, and this has become yellow. That means this connection is coming from somewhere else, and that somewhere else is this cube. So if you move translate z, this translate z also moves. But if you move it in any other direction, this will have no effect over it. So this is called, I'm sorry. Yeah, so this is called connection between the two attributes, right? You can directly connect one attribute to another one. There is another way of doing it, and let me show you how that is done. So I'm going to zero this out. I'm going to break connection over here. Okay. Now the other way of moving something or controlling something is via expressions or a little bit of coding. So if you go to translate z, same access over here, control, right click, all right, go to expressions. Okay, and you will find over here that p-sphere one translate z is over here because that's what we selected. All right, paste it over here so that we get an object. Now select this one, select the translate z of pq, copy this one as well over here. All right. So what I want to tell Maya is that this one, wherever this one moves, whatever the value this moves in translate z needs to be copied by this to get the desired effect that we need. Okay. So once we go over here, what we're going to do is we're going to say translate z, p-sphere one translate z space is equal to p cube 1 translate z. All right, put a semicolon to finish this and create. Now wherever this goes, this will follow. So what we actually told it is the translate z of p-sphere 1 should be equal to translate z of p-sphere p cube 1. All right. Now what I can do is, if I want something, for example, I want this to be double the amount of translation of Q. If I move, say, example, 5 units, translate Z, I want the sphere to move double the units, that is 10 units, all right? So how we can do that is simply go over here and say the translate of p-sphere 1 should be double the amount, that is multiplied by 2, all right, and edit. So now if you move it, say 5 units, this one moves 10 units over here. So this is another way. I understand if people are not getting it right away right now, but I will show it with examples of how it will be useful in rigging later. But just bear with me for now. Let me just clear out the concepts. So this is doubling the effect, all right? What if I want to turn the effect into half? right? What then? So for example, if this is to move like say 10 units, I want the I want the sphere to move only say 5 units, all right? So what we can do is just go to translate Z, all right? From multiply to make it to divide, all right? And edit. Now check it out. The more you move this, the slower that one moves, all right? It will always be half the value. So for example, if this is 30, this will become 50. The point of me showing off all of this stuff is to tell you that there is not one single method of controlling it, right? Once you start understanding how Maya works, controlling something will become easier with a lot of other aspects. So, working example of all of this, I'll show you one thing. I'm going to make a small rig over here. Modify freeze transformation. So let's just say that this is a card, all right? A card that you push around, all right? Now I want, whenever I move this card, I want the wheel to go with it and also rotate at the same time, all right? Now let me show you with examples how we can do that. So let's take up, say, parenting. But with parenting, all you can do is, for example, if this is a child, this is a parent, hit B, you can only make it move, all right? Then you will have to, if you want to move it around, like if you have to rotate it, you'll have to do it manually, all right? So with parenting, let's do that. I want to move it, okay? And I want this to rotate at the same time. So what I'm going to do is, there's something called set driven key. What happens is you have to give an already existing animation to the wheel and say that whenever the cube moves in translate Z axis, we will activate that animation. All right, here's how it goes. So you have over here what axis you want to rotate, make sure of that. You want to rotate it in X axis. All right, you go to X, rotate X, control, right click, go to set driven key over here. All right, click on that. You will get an interface somewhat like this. All right, so this is the driven object. So you select the driven object and say no driven. All right, what is the driver object? What is the object that determines the what controls the animation of this object will be the driver. All right, so you select the cube and say load driver. Okay, now the axis that needs to control the rotation is Z axis. All right, so we're going to click Z axis over here. So the Z axis of P cube 1 will control the rotate X of P cylinder 1. All right, so in 0 value, translate Z is 0, translate rotate X of this is 0. Okay, we'll hit a key over here. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to move this, say 10 units or say 1 unit. So 1 unit, and I'm going to rotate this to say 36 degrees. All right, and key again. Okay, now you cannot edit this in all the key that you made will not be shown in the timeline over here. Okay, but if we open up our graph editor, go to graph editor, you will see that the rotate X now has a graph over here. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to make this linear. I mean, we're going to make this continuous, and infinity we're going to give pre and post infinity as linear. So it just keeps on going. All right, now if we move this, now for every 1 unit that your translate Z does, the cylinder does a 36 degree of rotation. Okay, So for 10 units, it will do a 360 degree. Simple mathematics. So now what you've done is you've taken the translate z of an object and connected it to the rotation of another object. Okay. And with this, you can make, for example, the tires of a car, or a cart, for example, what I've shown over here. But this is to show you that you can connect one's translation to another rotation as well with just the help of a small set-driven key. Okay. If you have seen the movie Transformers, so in that movie, there are a lot of moving parts of the robot. Okay. The animator will go crazy if all the parts need to be animated separately. All right. So what they do is they create pre-done animation of a certain parts. For example, the engine opening into some sort of thing, the wheel turning into some sort of thing, and they'll put it into set-driven key. Okay. And they will give sliders over here to the animator so that when the transformation is happening, all the animator has to do is just move the slider and all the animation will be done by itself. So it's a pre-recorded animation activated by some other object. So that is what we done. We did a pre-recorded animation and we've activated it with the help of a cube. All right. So whenever the cube moves in z-axis, any other way it moves, there will be no no changes, but only in z-axis because that's what we've connected. All right. So there goes one method of connecting, like one attribute to another. Now let's see another way of connecting. As I've said, let's use the expressions to get the same output, of what we did over here. So I'm going to go and say break connection. All right. And I'm going to unparent it as well. So right now, this has no connection, with the whatsoever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell Maya to control the translate z and the rotation of this cylinder with the help of the box. All right. How are we going to do that? Let me show you. So you take the cylinder, all right, and you have to move it in translate z, right? So we go over here to say expressions, all right, and the same method that I told you. The translate z of polycylinder should be equal to the translate z of what was its name? P cube 1. All right. We create. Now you see that right now it only moves with it. The translation, whatever value of your translate z is being copied to the translate z of your v. All right. So now the next step is to give it a rotation. All right. Now we have to connect the translate z of this object to the rotation x of this object. All right. So how are we going to do that? The same method. We go over here. We go to translate z over here. All right. And we take the rotate x value over here. So we want the P cylinders rotate x value should be equal to P cube once translate z value. All right. Now let's hit and see what happens. Now we've created it and you see that now rotation x is also controlled. So we are moving it, but as I don't know if you guys can see, but it's moving very slowly. Okay, that is because centimeter is being converted into rotation, into degrees. We have this disparity over here. So what we can do is we can change this by multiplying the output. We go over here to rotate x, and what we're going to do is we're going to multiply this by say 5. Okay. Now if you see, a little bit improvement in the rotation, all right? So we're going to increase the value a bit more. We make it to say 36. So now you see, now whenever we move this, it's also going to translate as well as rotate as well. So if you see, there are two connections over here. The translate Z is being controlled by the cube as well, and also the rotate X is being controlled by the cube. Now, this was one way to make it with the help of expressions, all right? There's another way that we can do with the same thing, what we did right now, is through Maya nodes, okay? Let's go into that. And before we go into that, I would like to ask you guys, are you guys understanding this? Are you feeling that this is a bit too much for you? Or it could be another way that it can be explained, because this is a technical stuff. And if you're not getting it, then I need to change the way of how I'm actually teaching you. You guys can turn on your mic and tell me that. So all good? I can move forward?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Now we're going to get the same effect using nodes, Maya nodes over here. Okay. So I'm going to break connection over here again, so that, you know, like we start off fresh. First we'll make this 0. Break connection over here. Okay. And we're going to open up node editor over here. All right. If you don't know where node editor usually is, you can go to Windows and you will have your node editor right below the outliner. All right. You click on it, that is node editor. So when you open up node editor, this is usually blank over here. Okay, this is usually blank over here. So what you do is, whatever object you need to show inside, you select them and you click this plus sign that is given over here. All right. If I, you know, there's a plus sign right below options option, you know, and then you'll see that you've gotten this, but this is just shape node. So what you're going to go is show all. So right now we've got transform node and shape node. So the people who don't know what transform node and what shape node is, whenever you create an object in Maya, okay, Maya splits it into two. One will be the transform node and one will be the object, one will be shape node, right? Let me show you what that is. So transform node, whatever you see over here, right, in the channel editor, the translation, rotation, scale, and visibility, all of this comes under the transform node. That is, the changes, the physical changes that you're making in the world space of Maya is called transformation. That's why it's called transform node, all right? And below that, you have something called PQ1 shape, all right? So whatever changes you make in the shape, for example, if you tweak the vertices, if you extrude it, and if you, you know, like change any sort of shape of that, or add any sort of modifier and all of that comes under shape node. Okay, so if you go into your node editor, I'll show you this. So you'll get both of them. So you have PQ1 transform node and shape node. Okay, so if you delete shape node, let me tell you what happens. If you select, the transform node is still there, but there is no physical object for it to control. Right, all the shape information, all the shaders information, all the vertices, all the faces, everything has now been obliterated. Okay, so shape node is also very important. So this is transform node, this is shape node. So whatever we are going to do right now in rigging usually depends on the transform. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all the shape nodes over here and press this minus button so that we don't see them in the node editor over here. Okay. Now all we have is P cube and cylinder. Select them both. Click over here so you can expand them. Okay. Now they've expanded. So you can see the translate is over here, the rotation values are over here, scale value. So whatever you are seeing in the channel editor, everything will come over here. All right. So with which we can control the objects connections. So if you remember initially I connected with the help of connection editor. You can do the same thing over here. So for example, if I need to control the translate Z of the wheel with the help of the translate Z of the cube, what I'm going to go is open up the translations of both, connect the translate Z to translate. Just click and drag and then it's connected. That's it. You see this arrow going through? You see this arrow going through, green arrow? That means the connection has been established. Okay. Now if I pull the translate Z of cube, you can see that now this is also moving. Okay. Now we can also connect a translation of an object to the rotation of another object as well with the help of the same node editor. Okay. So what I'm going to do is we need translate Z to control the rotation of the rotation X of the wheel. All right. So translate Z, pull out the arrow and contain it and connect it to rotate X. Okay. You will find that this Maya gives out something called unit conversion. As I've told you before, Maya calculates distance in centimeters and rotation in degrees. So it needs some sort of like a converter to convert the value of centimeters to degrees. Okay. So that is what is happening here. You don't have to worry about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to check out how much rotation is happening. Okay. As we can see, very less rotation, because if you convert say 10 centimeters, all right, to 10 degrees of rotation, it is very less. 10 degrees of rotation is barely noticeable. All right. So we need something to multiply the effect between them. Okay. So what is happening right now is PQ1 is sending signals. PQ1 is saying, okay, fine, I am moving translate Z 10. So you also turn 10 degrees. Okay. It is doing its job perfectly, but we don't want that. We want it to amplify the effect. All right. We want the translate 1 to multiply by say 36 values, okay, into the cube. Now how we'll do that is if we press tab, the small search bar opens up. Okay. If I press tab over here, you see the small search bar is open up. Type multiply in it. So you get this node called multiply divide. Okay. As name suggests, it multiplies and divides value within the nodes. Okay. So as soon as I click it, you'll see this node opens up and it has the symbol of multiplication and division. Okay. So this is where the magic happens. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up and I'm going to connect the I'm going to delete this connection over here. I'm going to connect the translate Z into the input Z of multiply divide. Okay. And then I'm going to connect the output Z. Whichever you have connected, usi ka lagana hai. Okay. You cannot put it into Z and then expect it to happen from X. All right. You'll have to connect the Z only. Okay. So I connected into input Z. Now I'm going to use the output Z to connect into unit conversion. Sorry, I have to open this up. Others. Okay, connect it into the input. All right. Now, watch what happens. Absolutely nothing. Nothing will happen because we haven't given this multiply divide node the value it needs to multiply it with. Okay. So, abhi hum is pe double click karte hain. If we double click on it, we'll see this small window open. Okay. So, here you can see that the Z axis is highlighted. because it is getting information from the p-cube1 ka z-axis. Okay, from the card ka z-axis. Okay, now we're going to multiply it with say 5. Okay, now if we multiply let's say 5. Okay, we move this 5 units. All right, now it will be 25 because we gave the multiply divide unit a value of 5. So 5 multiplied by 5 is 25. So for every 5 units, it will go 25 units. See, now it's improving. Okay, whatever value you give it, the multiply divide node will multiply it by the number you've given it and then transfer it to the x-axis of the wheel. So simple mathematics, but all you need to understand is how you're going to put the values in. Okay, now if I want to change the value more, I'm just going to put it to say 36. Okay, so whatever value is there on translate z will get multiplied by 36, and whatever answer is coming, that will be added to the rotate x of this one. Okay, now look what happens. All right, so this is one way. Okay, now for example, if you want this to be into say divide, all right, for that we'll need to have another example. Okay, the translate z, I want this thing to translate more. Sorry, with the same thing I can explain it to you. If I go into divide, you can change the operation from multiply to divide over here. Okay, now nothing will happen because no matter what you divide by 0 is just that. Or we can put it up into power. As we know in mathematics, if you 2 power is equal to is a 9, all right, something like that. So instead of multiplying with that amount, it will compound that amount. So let's change this value to say 2 and put the operation on power. So if I put 2, then the value is 4. That is, it's squaring it. It is powering that. So that is a simple math that you can use to use this. So multiply and 36. So with the node, you can control this. Now, for example, if this is not, say, a car, but we want some sort of machinery in which if this moves in this direction, I want it to rotate in the opposite direction. So what I can do is I can go hit tab, create a reverse node. Okay, open this up again. Now, whatever is value is coming from the multiply divide will get multiplied by -1, or it will get reversed. Whatever value was there will get reversed and be input into that. So how we can do that is delete this connection, make the output Z, connect into input Z over here, and output Z into the input over here. Now, if you see, now the wheel will start rotating in the opposite direction. So this is what you can do with the input connection networks. And this is very useful, and it is not only limited to, say, rigging, it is also used in texturing as well. So, for example, if you have an image and you want to invert the image, say black ka white karna, and you have to do white ka black. So you don't have to go to Photoshop, like invert the image and all. You just have to put in an inverse node, and then everything will be done. So right now we've learned how to control one object with another object. First was with the help of set-driven key. Second was with the help of expressions. Third was with the help of node editor. All right, and as always, there is always constraining over there. Okay, so why do we need to use node editors? Because the problem with expressions is that it calculates on every frame. Like each frame you move around, it calculates itself. So your computer needs a lot of computing power to run on expressions. Okay. So right now this doesn't matter. For example, if we are just using it to control two boxes, it doesn't matter because that much computing power every computer has. But imagine you are using it to control a rig. Okay, you are using a rig, and then there will be multiples and hundreds of expressions, and it has to calculate it every time you move a frame. Then there is a very vast chance that your system can shut down. All right, it requires a lot of computing power. That's why we try to, as riggers, we should always try to maintain, always try to avoid using expressions wherever we can and use this, because as you can see, the result is the same. You can use set-driven key, you can use node editor, you can use expression editor. The result is the same. So why am I showing you one example with three methods is that there are different methods to do that with Maya, okay, in Maya and rigging. And the only thing is that we are limited to the knowledge that we've been taught till now. That is one of the basic flaw that our design has. We went into some institute, okay, we start learning something, and then whatever method they taught us, which is whatever they knew, has resonated with us for a very long time. So we are not able to think outside the box. So for me, through this webinar, my only goal is not to teach you rigging basically, but to point you in the right direction. To tell you that there is something like this which you can pursue on your own. Because if I start teaching you rigging, I cannot do it in 2 hours. I minimum need 20 hours and I'll need like 3 to 4 weeks of time to teach you rigging, because it's that deep of a topic. But my goal is to make you understand that there are things like this which you can use to further your rigging knowledge. If you till now, for example, you didn't know what node editor does, okay, you had no idea what node editor is, okay, so what happens is now you know what it is. So you can go to YouTube, you can go to Google, search how node network works. All right, what can we do with node editor? There are hundreds of people who put in a lot of information in net for free for you to learn. How do you think I learned? Okay, like my people who taught me, I do agree that I got a very good rigging teacher when I was studying. I was very lucky to have that. Yeah, I was very lucky to have such a teacher. He had a production experience. He was working as a rigger in DQ for like 7 years, and then he came to teaching. So I was lucky enough to get a teacher like that, and who was also willing to teach me. Because I go every day to him with some sort of a problem, and he will, if he didn't know, he'll go home, he'll research, and after 2 days or 3 days, he'll come and give me the solution of what it is. So I had such a good teacher, but not everyone is, fortunate enough to have teachers like that. So that is my reason to have, webinars like this, so that, you can at least be pointed towards a direction. If you are willing to learn, you will learn no matter what. But at least, let me tell you that it is not a big deal to learn rigging. Rigging is not something with, 2 horns is gonna like kill you. Okay, rigging is pretty easy. It is basic maths. I used to fail in maths in classes. Can you imagine? So if I can be good at it, anybody can. Okay, and if you are good at maths and physics, a little bit of physics, I'm pretty sure. And if you know coding, then it's great, man. And if you know a little bit of coding as well, you can shine as a technical artist, because there are a lot of animators in the industry. There are a lot of texturing, modeling, artistic guys. There's no limit to them, but there is a limit of technical artists. Okay, like people who are willing to put in the knowledge, the effort to learn something that is technical and solve and bring something and make people's life easier. Those people are very rare in the industry, even now, even at today's life. So if you're considerably good at technical, know-how, I'm pretty sure that you will be paid to your wage worth in gold or money. So that is how it works out in the industry for now. Just 1 second, let me see how much more time or something we have. All right. So 3 methods to control one object with the help of another object. One was set-driven key. Second was constraining, obviously, and simple parenting. And then we have your note editor, and then we have scripting, that is expressions, right? So these are the things that I've opened up for you guys to check out and to work on in future as well. So I want you guys, after this webinar is over, I want you guys to, whatever notes you've taken, sit down with that on Maya and, try to figure this out. Okay? Connect one translation to another, connect one scale to another, connect different scale. Like for example, connect translation to scale, see what happens. Okay? And connect translation to scale and put a reverse node in it and see what happens. Okay? I want you guys to experiment and find out what you can do, what is the limit, of what you can push this to. Max to max, what will happen? Maybe your Maya will crash. Okay, close it, reopen it. Not a big deal. All right, we have unlimited supply of nodes, and this thing is Maya. Okay, so one more thing before I think that I want to teach a lot. One thing I'm wondering is how is not Zoom closing in on me? It's 40 minutes already. It should have closed by now. So I don't know. I think something's happening. So that's a good thing, I believe. This is where I want to take a vote. Okay, do you want me to go further and teach you skeleton setups and controller setups as well? Because it's going to take a lot more time, and also it might confuse you. Or do you want to practice this and then we can continue this in the webinar part 2 of rigging? So I want your vote on this one. You guys can, send it in chat. Chat is for everyone. Don't put it in private one. Like just put it in the group chat and let me see if you guys Because we also need some time for Q&A session as well. And also I need to clear some more concepts, 1 or 2 concepts which are related to this. And if we go on, then this video will get very long. And then, people might not be able to understand it, what I'm trying to teach. I see some 10 people who are attending this webinar. Oh, that's including 9 people. So I only got like 1 chat or something. By far, people are wanting for put a pause on this and then move on. And that is the vote over here. As far as like only 4 people have commented. So yeah, so what I'm going to do is let's split this up into 2. So the people who haven't understood the concepts yet, let them go and practice some in Maya, or probably I'll be uploading this in like 2 days or something in internet, so you can go back and like revisit the concepts one again if you're not understanding this, because obviously you won't get it in the first go, because if you did, then what is then like what is the point? Then I'll be the best teacher in the world. So if you get it in this 20 minutes of time, whatever I taught you, go ahead and practice this. And like I'm gonna teach how to handle multiple constrainings, and then after that like handle multiple constraining, and then we'll go into the Q&A session. All right, so I think that is what the board says for now. Fine. So everybody has this problem, while animating. A lot of juniors have this problem, and a lot of seniors also face this problem sometimes. That is multiple constraining option. All right. So for example, if you have an object, okay, which doesn't have many controllers, but like you have to switch it from one hand to another hand, on one character to another character, right? And that causes a lot of problem and you're not understanding. For example, I'll create a small rig for you guys to understand. Okay, so you have, this is a prop. Let's say this is a prop, okay, and this has one controller that is its main controller, and another that is the object itself. So sometimes we get a prop like this where we don't have many controllers on how to move about it. So let me show you what we can do with it. So for example, let's say this guy catches this object and then gives it to this guy. And then this guy, this character takes the object and then, like gives it to, let's say, another character. Okay. Gives it to the cone. All right. So let's say this guy is cylinder, sphere, and this guy, let's call him, like cone, right? And he's on Mr. Q. Okay, so always whenever you are animating or whenever you are constraining, make sure that one thing needs to happen, that is always constrain the parent first. Because if you constrain the child first, the parent gets redundant. Let me explain what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, so if, for example, this guy is to control this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is he's the controller, this guy is the controlled, so I'm going to go to constrain and parent. All right, so what is going to happen is this guy is going to move with them, yes, but also we have this guy free over here, the one that is lower in the hierarchy, free over here to move around and animate on its own. Okay, so if we need to make some adjustments, we can do that. But if in the beginning itself we constrain this guy to the if we constrain the cylinder to the cube, now what will happen is, one thing is this controller is gone for waste completely. So you can do nothing with this controller anymore. So first, and also you've lost the ability to animate this guy separately. If you want to make a few tweaks and all that, you've lost the ability, which you could have if you would have chosen this one. So one rule is always that whenever you are parenting, if there is a parent available, always go for that. Child comes later. All right. So let me tell you how this can work out. So this guy is going to control. Okay, this guy is going to control this object, and what he does is he goes to, let's animate him from 1 to 20. All right, he goes from 1 to 20, gives our Mr. Sphere the object. He's like, here's the cube, you take it. All right, say pass the parser game. All right, so on frame 21, we need this guy to take care of this person. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the parent, the controller, the control that is the same controller over here, and we can go ahead and give another parent. It's fine. Let me tell you what we can do. For right now, if you see, they will try to fight with each other. Okay, this guy will be saying that I have the full control. Okay, because sorry, I have the full control because my weight is 1. This guy will fight that I have the full control, that my weight is 1. So what we can do is we can separate the weight for those guys. So for example, on frame 1, we can keep the weight, keep both of them. On frame 1, we can keep the sphere weight 0 and the cylinder weight 1. Okay. Now we have told the cube officially that you are going to be with cube for now. Sorry, with the cylinder for now. Okay. Now the cylinder moves on and goes to frame 20. Okay. Now we tell the cube that okay, fine. Now you've come to frame 20. Now you can go to sphere. So what we can do is on frame 19 or frame 20 itself, we can keep both of them. So till now it's being controlled by cube only. Cylinder only. But now we want the cube to go to the sphere. So the second character. So now on frame 21, we can make the cylinder weight 0 and the sphere weight 1. Okay. And from frame 21 to whatever frame you want, this will keep going. So this is how you can go from one object to another object. Okay. Now, what about third object? Now you can ask that how many objects am I going to cram in just one controller? Okay. So let me teach you that as well. So what we can do is, say on frame 60, the sphere decides I don't want this cube anymore. Let me give it to cone now. Okay. So it goes near cone. Okay, or cone comes near it. It doesn't matter. Whatever your animation demands. All right. And what you can do now is, now on frame 60, you can parent, or frame 61, you can parent this child cube to this guy over here. Okay. So controller, control, constraint, and parent. All right. So till frame 60, the weight will be 0 because we want it to go with this guy. On frame 61, we want it to be 1. Okay. Now from frame 61 to whatever frame, now it will go with this one. So once we've given, this is what I was telling you. The sphere still controls this control over here. But since the child has been given another parent, this becomes redundant. So as much as you can, always try to constrain the parent to the object. Okay, child comes later always, because you will have authority to, you will have control over the object at least for a little while. All right. So this is how you can do multiple parenting. Find the hierarchy of the object. Okay. Play with the weights properly on proper frame. Okay. Note down your frame first. So if you want your animation, that is what called planning of animation. So if you want this phone to go from this hand to this hand, I need to make sure what are the frames that I need to use. For example, if say I am on frame 1 over here, and I know that in blocking it's frame 20 over here, right? So what I'll do is I'll keep till 19, my hand, the phone will be parented to my right hand. Okay. On frame 20, I'll snap the parenting to left hand. Okay. From then onwards, my left hand will control it. So you have to make sure that you cannot be careless with the frame. Okay, with the number of frames. You have to be exact about it. And that is where planning comes in. A well-planned shot can go flawlessly if even though it has like 5 different multiple constraints or something. It doesn't matter. You have to plan your shot first. So that is what comes under workflow. That is what you learn with experience. You do things wrong, and then you get frustrated, and then one fine day you will find a solution, or you will go to a senior and be like, I can't do this. How are you able to do this? And that person will tell you that this is how that. So that's where experience comes into play. Okay, so this is what I wanted to share with people, because a lot of people struggle with this sort of constraining. So I would suggest, don't keep in a single controller, don't keep more than 2 constraints. You can if you have a confidence that you can handle it, but after a certain point of time it gets too complicated. So use multiple controls and multiple constraints, and plan your shot accordingly. So I think that is all we have time. Is going to be 1.5 hours since we started. So I say we'll move on to the Q&A session now. And if you guys have any questions, any queries, or anything related to the rigging as well, or if there's something else that you want to ask also, please do share now. I would ask you to one by one ask me the questions, unmute your mics, and this is your time. The floor is yours. Hello. I heard like someone said something.
Hi Vignesh.
One second, Utkarsh. Let me check if my computer audio is on. Can you guys hear what
Okay.
Utkarsh is saying? No. Okay.
Yes, yes.
So can you hear him now? Utkarsh say something.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you're audible now. So you will get recorded in the computer as well. Yeah. Go ahead, Utkarsh. Ask me.
Okay. So I've seen that when doing character animation, many animators use a lot of locators with their props so that they can uh, move them in different directions. So please tell us about that and how do we use locators with props?
Excellent question. Locator is one of the integral part of rigging and animation as well because it is a null object that doesn't show up in renders. First thing, okay, that is the first advantage. Second is that there is no complicated setup when it comes to locator. So, for example, say how Shweta asked me before this webinar started. She is the one who put up this question of multiple constraining. She was struggling with that, and a lot of people do because I've seen that. So what you can do is, say for example, this is an object. Get rid of everything. We have a cube over here and a cylinder over here. All right. So what people do is, if you don't have any controllers for this, or if you have less controllers for it, and all we can do is create a locator. All right. So locator, whatever you create in Maya, it always goes to the grid. That is like given. Okay. In Blender, we have like 3D cursor and all. Wherever you place object will be created there. But in Maya, everything originates from the grid. All right. So obviously, the locator will also come in the grid. So what I'll suggest is hit Control G and group the locator. All right. Let me open the outliner. Okay. So always group the locator. All right. Now do what you want to do is this is the cube that you have. Okay. Now what you can do is select the cube first and then the group. All right. And then do this thing to snap it. Do point constraint and orient constraint. Okay. What will happen is the locators group will go and snap to the object. Okay. And then you can delete the locator, delete the constraints. That's fine. Okay. Now you see that the wherever in the world your object is, your locators group has taken the exact value of your object. Okay. So now what you can do is you can control the object with say the locator. All right. Sorry. Now the locator is controlling the object. Okay. Now you can parent this controller, or you can use your cylinder to control the group of the locator. Okay. And then what is happening right now is it's a hierarchy going on right now. The cylinder is controlling the group of the locator, and the group instead is controlling locator, and locator is controlling the object. So what is happening is, even though you did not have any controls for the object, okay, now if you use the locator, you can still move it around. Okay. So the object is controlling the group of the locator, and the locator is controlling the object. So even though you don't have any control for the object, for example, sometimes there are props which are not rigged, all right, or which are poorly rigged, and you want extra controls for that. You can always use this method to do something like that. So this is one way that locator helps you out in like solving an issue. Or for example, if you need something to be pointing towards a locator. Need pointing towards something. So, for example, we have a cylinder over here. Okay. Sorry. And its pivot is over here. All right. Now you want this to rotate and look it in a direction for where things are looking at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a locator. Move it around here, all right? And then controller, controlled object, and then constraint. In aim constraint with maintain offset, I'll apply this. So now this constraint controls the rotation of this, like a joystick or something like that. Okay, so for example, if you have an object that you're holding, for example, a stick that you're holding, okay, and it's pivoted to the ground, right? So you can either make the stick control the hand, or you can use something like this, like a like a translation that can control the stick around, so that your hand gets also animated with the stick. All right. So for example, if someone is sitting in the mic, okay, so his mic stand is over here. Sorry. So his mic stand is over here, and he's like bending down and picking it up, and all that stuff is happening. So you can use this locator to like control. His body will be controlled by you, but you can use the locator to control both hand and the mic stand together. So these type of things will save you time when you are animating in a production setting. Okay. So this is some sort of tricks that we use as seniors. We use this to fasten our workflow. The difference between the speed of a junior and a senior, it comes here only. All right. So these are the small things that you can do with locator. Okay. The main advantage of locator is that no matter how much you use it, it doesn't show up in Blender. Okay. So that is one thing. And also Maya has a separate on-off button for locator over here. So if this is off, no matter how many locators in your scene are there, you cannot select them. Sorry. What happened? I should be able to select this. Oh, sorry, this one. So if you turn off this question mark, you will not be able to select the locator. So you will be able to select everything else. So that is one advantage of using locator instead of some sort of curve or something. Okay. Did that answer your question, or do you need something more specific?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, guys, questions?
I have a question on graph editor.
Okay.
How to flip the keys horizontally?
That comes under Maya, but animation, but
Yeah.
no issues. So let's say
Like
you have
scale up and down.
Yeah, okay. So you have this thing from 1 to 40. It goes up. Okay. It goes up, say 15 units, and 17 comes down. Right. So this is your animation. If you go into graph, data over here. Translate Y. So what you can do is, there's a simple formula for it. That is, star is equal to -1. Okay. If you do that, your graph will be flipped. So if you do, go over here to the values area. Okay. Hit star is equal to -1. So what it does is, whatever is selected, it multiplies it by -1. Okay. So your whole graph flips.
And
Yeah,
similarly,
so,
we can scale also, right? With that formula.
For scale, I'm not sure, but this only works if, like for example, if for example both are same equal, like like the graph have a same base, that's when it works. Okay. So if it's like this and you try to do, it will flip the entire thing like that. Okay. So make sure how you use it. All right. So if that is the case, you only want this into minus value, then you can do the same thing over here. So use it judicially. I mean, it's not a hack for all stuff without thinking, but you can flip it like this. For scale also, what you can do is just select all of them, find the middle point where you want to keep. Okay. So for example, this is my middle point. Okay. Or let's just say this is my middle point over here. Okay. And I want the whole graph to be flipped from from this point. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the graph, hit R, R for resize, shift and middle mouse button and drag it down. So it will start scaling. Whatever, like flipped value you want, you can use like that. So I either use that formula or I use this one. Also, if you want to reduce the whole value of the graph, what you can do is star 0.5. Sorry. Yeah, so it will scale the whole value like that. Okay, and the next time you use the same formula, for example, if you want to reduce it even further, okay, now this will become the whole value. So always know that whatever value you are multiplying, okay, will be from the whole value. I don't know how to explain. 1 second. Yeah, so this is 15, right? Okay, let's just for a even value, let's make it 20. Okay, so from 0 to 20. Okay, now if I select this and say star equal to 0.2, okay, it will reduce 80% of the graph value. So 80% is how 4 eggs are. So that is how it works out. So and also if you want 20% reduced, so you'll have to put in star equal to 0.8. Now it will come down to 60. So that is how this maths works. Okay, if you start using this in your daily life, then you will find out that it's pretty simple actually. After a certain point of time, you will get used to it. And it's a good thing that you asked. Everybody who has learned this from now, who didn't know this before and learned it now, it will be very useful for them, like in the future when they start animating. Any other question? It's not limited to one person, one question. If you have questions, you can ask. Multiple questions also welcome.
I have a question related to the graph editor. Can we copy a single curve like rotation X onto a different object? Like when we try to copy the keys, we copy everything, right? Translate, scale, and rotation. But what if I want to copy a single curve? Then what do I do then?
You want to copy a single curve as in a single animation of a whole axis.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So that is like, for example, let's say this is translate by, right? So, all right, so this is the only animation that you have. For example, let's put in another animation as well. So you have animation in two these things now. Translate X and translate Y, okay? Now imagine there is another cube over here, okay? And I only want the translate Y animation of that copied to this one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So all you have to do is just click over there, go to translate Y, select the channel editor, right click, say copy selected, okay? And go to over here, and from wherever you want it to be pasted, all right? Say paste selected. Where's that? Now you see, it's copied. Only translate Y, and that too from wherever you want. So you can copy it, and then from wherever you want, keep your cursor over there and then paste it. So you'll get it in whatever offset you want it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay, good. Anyone else? I'm pretty sure whatever I taught, for some people it would have been the first time. If you didn't get it, I can also re-explain if you want some of the concepts. Oh yeah, and one more thing I actually forgot to tell you is that constraints work on pivot. For example, let's say I have simple parenting. For example, this is child, this is parent. I hit P, and if I move the pivot of this, nothing happens to the child, right? Like nothing happens. It's just it'll just be controlled from here. That's all. That's all that works. But if you want to flip it, for example, if this is the case in say constrained parenting, this is a controller, this is a controlled. I'll go to constrained parent. All right. So if I try to move the pivot of an object, the constrained object will also move with it. So this is a very important point. Please do remember that pivot controls your constraint values. So if you make any changes in pivot after you constrain the object, then it will go for a toss. All right. So make sure your pivots are in the right place before you constrain, because if you move your pivot, then your whatever constrained objects will go with the pivot wherever it goes. Okay. So this is something that you need to understand and keep in mind while doing it. Okay. Yeah. Any questions? Okay. So if there are no questions, we can conclude this session over here. Thank you guys for joining. And if you think that a few concepts of yours haven't been cleared, then you should let me know right now, actually, so that I can clear it right now. But I am sure that if you go back and check the video again, you might be able to solve this. And I would suggest that take a small project of your own, like for rigging. Say just take 2 boxes or 2 cones or something, and trying to replicate like whatever I taught. And if you get stuck in it, that's the best way to learn. So try replicating whatever I taught, because if you get stuck, you can always go back to the video and check how I did it. So once one axis is cleared, then all the other axes will be cleared. So if one concept is cleared in one example, I'm pretty sure you can use it in various other examples as well. Go ahead to YouTube and probably Skillshare or wherever you want to. And then study it well and find another examples of how things are. What I've taught you is just one example. This can be used in variable methods in various situations that you can use, right? So yeah, Utkarsh. So skeletal setup will be next week. Skeletal setup next week will be skeletal setup, how to orient skeletons properly, joints properly, how to create custom controllers. You cannot how to create controllers which are different shaped and boxes and all that stuff and all. And then I'll teach you how to skin, and also probably show you the difference between the inverse kinematics and the how to set up a FK hand and an IK hand. So that will all be covered next week. So I want you guys to be ready for next week. So I want you to be clear headed. Go and practice this one for a whole week. And if you get any doubts from this session also, after working on it, you can ask me in the next session, like the next week session that is going to happen. I would suggest that the people who attended this session, please do attend the next session as well, because it will be more advanced and it will be more fun than this fundamental basics what I got here. Okay. All right, guys. See you next time. Next week, probably I'll keep an eye out on my Instagram and my LinkedIn, whoever follows me from wherever, and try to send people who might be interested in this, because I'm doing this for free. I don't earn money from it. My only my only objective is to teach as many people as possible, in this lockdown. Because I don't want people to go, because some people, their institutes might be closed. Some people, they might be feeling a little cabin feverish. So this is to help them out. And what I need you to do is spread the word, and and maybe subscribe to my channel so that you'll get update of whatever I release out there. Right? Okay, guys. Thank you very much. See you in the next seminar.